Yep.
Creative Insurgents. Creative Insurgents.
Hey, everybody. This is Corey Huff with the Creative Insurgents podcast.
And this is Melissa Dinwiddie, also with the Creative Insurgents podcast.
And hi, I'm Minnie.
Hi, Minnie.
Hi, Minnie.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining our very first live Creative Insurgents broadcast.
We're live.
We have no idea what we're doing. Yay!
What we do know is that we are all about living a creative life according to your own rules, right, guys?
Yay! So, Melissa, what's going on? There's all kinds of stuff going on besides us doing this live. What's going on in your life?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm in the middle of pre-launch for my program, Your Big Bold Creative Life Academy, and that's keeping me out of trouble, keeping me very busy. And in the meantime, I have been painting. I've been playing in my creative sandbox and working on canvas for the first time in, ever. I've never worked on a canvas this big. This is, not that huge of a canvas, but for me it's pretty big because I'm used to working on large pieces of paper which I can then crop to find a pleasing composition. And so this is a really different experience to start with a set shape that I have to work with, and I have just set the intention that I am going to stay in the creative sandbox and allow myself to play and not have any attachment to the product. And I've been having tons of fun sharing my process on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and getting lots of great feedback. So I highly encourage that for anyone who is sitting there thinking, oh, I'm happy creating in my studio, but I'm afraid to share it. Get your stuff out there because you will get responses that you never expected, and it's so motivating and so inspiring.
Absolutely.
So that's what's up with me. What about you, Corey?
Well, let's see. I'm directing my next show starting next week.
Woo!
Beyond that, I'm very excited about our first live broadcast, and I'm very excited about today's guest. Melissa, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I am so excited to have Luna Jaffe here. Luna, I got to meet in person in October, which was a real treat. And Luna combines two things that for so many people seem really, really far apart from each other. Creativity and money. Luna is a visual artist herself, as well as a writer and a therapist, and also a certified financial planner. So she really bridges those two things. And she is the author of Wild Money, which I have right here as well.
I should find my copy.
And the workbook, the companion journal. It's, as you can see, it's very colorful. It's a playful book, and it's all about money. It's all about this. It's designed to help you create a loving relationship with your money, one that is free of guilt and free of shame. And imagine how life would be if you could have that with your money, right? So welcome, Luna. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Really happy.
Hi, Luna.
Hi.
I really like your book. It's really pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted a beautiful book about money.
Yes.
There aren't many of those.
Yeah, exactly. There aren't many of those. They tend to be pretty dry, right?
Yeah, colorful, beautiful, lots of art.
Yes.
Yeah, Luna, I'm so glad you're here, and I just want to interject real quick. For those of you who are watching the live broadcast on creativeinsurgents.com/live, we still have, it looks like, 2 open spots if you want to join us live on the Google Hangout. We're going to be taking some questions from our live studio audience here in the Hangout. So we've got Divinity and Jacqueline and Rebecca and Sue, and we've got room for 2 more people. So if you click over to the Google Hangout and click on the Hangout link that is there in the Hangout or in the event page, you can join us live. You're also welcome to continue watching from creativeinsurgents.com/live. I may interject a couple more of those as we go along. I just want to make sure everybody knows all their options. So back to you, Melissa.
Cool. Thanks for the notification there, Corey.
Mm-hmm.
So Luna, one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on the show today is that you are what I would refer to as a passion pluralite. You are somebody with a lot of creative interests, a bazillion creative expressions, from visual art to dance to music. And you have a really varied background, both in terms of your life experience in general and in terms of your business life, how you have brought in your income. You've done really wild and crazy things. Like, those who are out there may not know that Luna spent 7 months sailing from Florida to Spain.
What?
I know. Can you believe that? She lived at Findhorn Community in northern Scotland, which is a spiritual community known for crazy things like talking to plant divas and growing miracle veggies in barren soil. And I know you've also done aerial arts and trapeze work, which, by the way, I spent a year studying at a circus school, so we have that in common as well. So that's pretty cool to have such a. You go check out Luna's about page, because there's just a whole list of things that she's done. And also, Luna, you have worked at some really diverse jobs. So you've worked. You created your own wearable silk art business, which I definitely want to ask you about. Yeah. And then you've also been a high-tech corporate trainer, and you've been a teamster, and you were a certified financial planner, and now you're an author, and you're on a mission to help women around the world to heal their relationship with money. So, pretty varied background. And I want to get to your current work, of course, the money piece, but first, we here at Creative Insurgents are very interested in empowering people to live their creative lives, including making money from their art, if that's what they want to do. So I'm really curious, how did you get into that wearable silk art business?
Oh, now that's a story. I've kind of been an accidental entrepreneur on many different planes, and so I was a dancer in college, and then I sailed and got out of school and went, this bilingual education degree that I got is not what I want to do. And traveling was great, but it didn't land me on what I wanted to do, and I was just lost, basically. And I landed in Boston, and I was walking down the street one day, and there was this incredible banner hanging outside of a new ceramics studio. And it was painted on silk, and I'd never seen silk painting before, and I looked at it and I went, I have to do that. And I walked in to the gallery and said, who did that? I need to learn from them. And amazingly, they said, oh, well, call Jan. She'll teach you. And so I did. And she taught me. And she taught me in one day. She said, here's the dye I use, here's where I buy the silk, here's how to do it, and go. And I was like, okay. And I started painting, and I didn't have a visual background. I loved art, but I was one of those kids that walked by the arts, the art classes in high school and college, drooling and not allowing myself to go there. In high school, I took auto mechanics instead of art. I was the first girl in my high school to take auto mechanics.
Awesome, love that.
And I don't really know why. I just didn't have any confidence about art. So but yet when I found this gut-wrenching go message from the universe, I just took it and went for it. And I found that I had a natural kind of connection with color. And I taught myself how to draw and do the other things I had to do. And then I enrolled in art school thinking, oh, I need a degree because I'm going to be an artist. And about 6 months into that, I went, no, I don't think so. And I quit. And I said, I'm going to just use, and I got in, which was a miracle because I didn't have a portfolio. I had to they're submit your portfolio. And I thought, okay, I need to do 10 pieces. Let's do 10 pieces. And at the time, I was actually modeling. I was an artist model in the Ivy League schools. So in Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Northwestern, I was modeling. So I was around art students and artists, but I wasn't one. So I was on the other side of the canvas, so to speak. And it was just fascinating. And so I guess I just thought, well, I can fake it. And I faked it, and I got in. And then I realized that they weren't teaching me anything I wanted to learn. And so I said, okay, I'm out of here. And let me use that money, instead of going into debt to get another undergraduate degree, let me use that money to basically teach myself more. And I started selling my work right away because I was making scarves, and scarves are pretty easy to sell. And I built my business from there. And it became a business where I was selling on Madison Avenue and in San Francisco at a wearable art gallery. But mostly I sold directly to people, and I did big commissioned pieces for people who wanted custom-made clothing and ritual. I did a lot of ritual kind of garments for people that were getting married, or they're Reiki masters, or they had a meditation practice and they wanted their special symbols on their kimono. I did all kinds of things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
I love that, because you basically did whatever the heck you want.
Pretty much. Yeah,
and so many people that I talk to are like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I don't know if I'm good enough, or if I'm smart enough, or if people like me enough. But it almost seems like you just never thought of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, I didn't really ask that question because it was such a passion. I was just like, well, if I love this, then, I mean, what's true is that when you're really passionate about something, it translates, and people want what you have. So if they can't embody your passion, then they want your art, because that's where your passion is being expressed.
Ooh,
and
that's
so,
a good quote.
There you go, quote of the day. And what was great about silk was that I could take it anywhere. So one of the best ways that I was able to sell my work, what I discovered was that, yeah, art shows were fine, but in general I sold far better when I went and did the things I love to do, like attend workshops or travel. And I just always brought my silks with me, and somebody would say, oh, that's really beautiful. And I'd say, you want to see more? I've got a whole truckload of it, or whatever. And I'd just pull out all my, my 10 kimonos, and I'd say, here's what I have. And I almost always sold a couple $1,000s worth of stuff.
Wow.
Even when I was at a therapy conference, or traveling in Asia, or living in Mexico, I always had my stuff, and it was very easy to pull out, and I was never afraid to say, yeah, here's what I do. And of course I could wear it, so it was beautiful because I could wear it. So it was very easy advertising. I didn't have to walk around with a canvas on my body. I could wear my hand-painted silk or hand-painted wool garment, and it was totally easy. So.
Well, I think what that also highlights is, of course, you had that advantage of being able to wear your art, right? And silk is pretty packable. It squishes down pretty small and stuff, so you can probably bring lots of pieces with you, or more than than big canvases, obviously.
Exactly.
But I think the thing that it also points to is the importance of selling to, finding your right tribe, right? Finding the people who are going to resonate with what you're creating, and finding their watering holes, essentially, like that's what Pamela Slim would call it. And just by attending workshops or conferences, you're automatically in a group of people who may not be gathered together for the purpose of silk painting, but to some degree they're your tribe, right? So automatically they have some investment, some connection with you, and people buy art because there's some kind of emotional connection that they feel. So brilliant strategy on your part.
Yeah. I just have a really quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Luna, I just want to know, did you learn to sew too?
Oh, that's such a great question. I already knew how to sew. I was one of those people that joined Girl Scouts. That was really weird. Why was I joining Girl Scouts? I was a total hippie girl in Girl Scouts. But anyway, my mom always laughed because I liked to sew without reading the instructions. So I'd get 3/4 of the way through a dress and go, oops, I forgot to put the zipper in. But on the other hand,
that sounds like me with everything I do.
What I really have as a skill set is improvisation. So I was not afraid ever in my silk painting business to just throw silk on a body and say, let's just cut it here and sew it there, and I just made up designs. So yes, I do sew, and that was definitely part of the beginning of my business. And then I quickly got into having contractors that sewed so I could paint, because I really loved to paint and I didn't love to sew. I love to design. I designed clothing, but I didn't want to sew multiple kimonos or all the little pouches that I made that were sort of my bread and butter.
Yeah, you know, that's a really, really good point. If you're endeavoring to start out a business and you don't want to get sucked completely dry, and you want to create a business out of what you love, it's really smart to figure out what is it about the thing that you most love doing, that you really adore, and what are the things that have to be done that maybe you're good at, but you don't adore them. They don't feed you. They don't nourish you. And is there a way that you can hire somebody else to do those things? Like for me, right now, next step, hiring a bookkeeper.
Oh, that's big. That's big.
Very big.
The other thing that I did a lot of was I trade. So somebody would fall in love with my work, but they'd be like, "Oh man, I really can't afford a $400 or $500 kimono," and I'd be like, "Well, what do you do? What do you have? What can you trade?" And I got some of my best. Like I traded for healthcare, so I had like credit at my healthcare provider. For because I designed a beautiful wall hanging for their office. My dentist, I traded with my dentist. I traded with people that had I got tons of beautiful art and jewelry because I loved trading. So, and I still trade. I love trading. I feel so gratified by making an exchange of somebody else's. Well, you and I traded, Melissa.
Traded, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I love it. It's like I have your artwork, you have my book, and that makes me feel more. My word for the year is plenty, and it makes me feel more plentiful, more full. When the exchange is actually like that, where it's a connection of exchange rather than necessarily a monetary exchange.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the monetary exchange for sure, but
right, of course, obviously.
But one of the things I wanted to come back to, Melissa, about your comment about know where your tribe is one of the things that really became clear to me was going to an art show where there's 200 other artists competing for the dollars of the people that were attending was not a great strategy for me. And what a great strategy for me was to, for example, I would sell at the American Humanistic Psychology Conference. Fabulous place for me because 1, I was the only person selling clothing. 2, they had money. 3, they loved beauty and they wanted to treat themselves. They were at a conference and everybody else was selling books or tapes or, things oriented to the profession. But I was selling clothing and they were like, "Oh my God, I can walk into a booth and it's beautiful and I can buy clothing. Yay!" So that was a really good lesson to me. And like if I were Melissa, your work, I would do the same thing. I mean, therapists eat that stuff up. They love words on art. They love beauty. They want to be taken care of and nurtured. And so it's thinking out of the box in terms of who is it that is likely to feel nourished by this. For me, it was also New Age. I would go to New Age type conferences or gatherings. I would go to women's spirituality circles and gatherings, and totally easy to sell my work. There was absolutely no struggle whatsoever.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to respond to that, but first I want to say if anybody's watching live on the Creative Insurgents page, creativeinsurgents.com/live, you might want to refresh the page because comments have recently been activated. So you can actually leave your comments right there on the page, but you might have to refresh it in order to see those comments showing up. So yeah, back to that. When speaking of selling to, finding where your right tribe gathers, where you're not competing with other people, like at an art show or something, I sold a ton of work at Patty Dye's Design Your Life camp, which was like completely unexpected, and it kind of, lit a light bulb up over my head, like, oh yeah, I really need to start thinking more outside the box, like you said, about where are people who are going to really be inspired and nourished and touched by what I'm doing, who aren't necessarily the people that I've been thinking about previously,
Yeah.
Well, I want to get to the money part. You've written this amazing book, Wild Money, and I'm really curious about that title because, of course, the word wild has a lot of different connotations, right?
Yeah.
So what does that term mean to you? How did you land on that as the title for your book?
Well, so Wild Money just came to me. Like the name just, your book is Wild Money. Like, and so for 6 months I was writing and just like, oh, okay, it's Wild Money, but I don't really know how to write a book, so I'll just start writing. And then after recognizing that was getting me nowhere, I hired I call him my book midwife, Jeffrey Davis from trackingwonder.com. He's amazing. And his first question to me is, what's wild money? Why wild money? Are you sure that's the right title? And I'm like, I am not giving up the title, Jeffrey. I'm not giving it up. That's the title. And he's like, well, then what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But what was really fun was that he gave me a series of questions that made me go, what is it? What is it? And what I recognized was it was several things. Wild as in natural and untamed. Wild, the wild or wilderness is a place that I think of as an ecosystem that's sustainable because it's in its natural state. It hasn't been overcultivated. It hasn't been domesticated. So when I think of what does this mean to have wild money, it's both the freedom of being in a good relationship with money as well as to be in the sustainability of an ecosystem that works. And so that's sort of the basic premise of the book. And writing a book is a really mysterious process. It's for me it was there's a name, now what? I have no idea. I feel like, I mean, really the work evolved and came out of me as I had to ask a lot of questions, like what is it that matters, and why do I feel that I have to help clients and students break down their relationship with money into more different ways that we relate to money, because sometimes we're really good at one thing and we're not good at another thing, and therefore we just think we suck at the whole thing.
Right.
And I found from working with clients for so many years that, you know, some people are incredible earners. I mean, they just bring in $200,000 a year and they're brilliant at earning. But when it comes to spending or nurturing or investing, they suck, like big time. Like have nothing to show for their $200,000 a year income. And then I have other people that have only earned $50,000 their entire life, I mean, every year. And they have $500,000 because they saved. And it's like, why is that so different? And that's why my book is broken down into that wild money, the mandala, which is 6 different money mandates. So it's about how do you receive, how do you nurture, how do you spend, how do you invest, how good are you at protecting the money that you've actually been either fortunate enough to inherit or receive or earn. How do you protect that? How do you protect the people you love, which has to do with your money? How do you protect the assets and the stuff that you've accumulated? And then the very last chapter and focus on the book is about giving, because as I was writing this book, I was piloting it, and I kept running across this issue. You know, 90% of my clients are women, and I kept running against women that were just giving all their money away, and they weren't saving. They were not putting any money into retirement because they kept feeling obligated to help every person and organization that came across their life. And I was like, why is this? Why can't we, as in general, as women, why is it so hard to say that I matter and that I need to make sure that I'm saving for myself? So that became the last chapter, or the last piece of that mandate, because I recognized that, wow, so there's a lot of out of balance energy around giving, and I needed to figure that out and help people to direct it.
Awesome. It's so great to hear that, to know that that's something that so many people struggle with, you know, because when you know that, then it doesn't feel like there's something wrong with you when you've got that same issue, you know?
Yeah. Melissa, we've got a couple of questions, one from Minnie, and then we've got one of our first audience questions from Mercedes Calcano in the Q&A app. But Minnie, go ahead. What's your question?
Oh, that's great. Oh, hi, Mercedes. Anyway, I was going to say, Luna, I just wanted to express how much I love hearing about your stories of starting, about beginning, and how you started painting silk, and how you decided to start painting, writing a book, because you're just so brave. You just do stuff. It's awesome.
Well, thank you.
So Mercedes says, how do you offer your works in events like that? I think she's talking about when you were selling your silks at those conferences. How do you even do that?
Yeah, I would just get a booth. I'd have an exhibitor booth, and I would set up this gorgeous display of my work and make sure that I had places for people to try things on. And most people don't go to these exhibits. They don't go to a conference or even approach a conference and say, hey, I'd like to sell an accessory or wearable art or fine art. And yet they're always like, really? That'd be so great. Please bring that. That'll make it much more interesting to our clientele if you have something beautiful in the exhibitor hallway. So there's lots of different places you could do that. I was always looking at what place was affordable, and so some exhibition fees are really expensive and some of them aren't. So I just went for the ones that seemed like they were in my price range. Like $500 to $800 felt like I could do that, but I wasn't going to spend $2,000 on a booth because I didn't think I would get that much. And I would look at how big's the audience and how much is the travel and make it work that way. So.
Yep.
Really sensible.
Thank you.
And any other questions out there?
Not right now. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. Well, so I know that you've written about something that relates to one of my biggest bugaboos about money that I mentioned, bookkeeping. I hate it. And one thing that that does is it makes me procrastinate, right? I hate bookkeeping, so I procrastinate, and then my quarterly sales tax return is due, and I have 3 days to do 3 months of bookkeeping, right?
Right.
And I know you have written a great series about the 5 triggers of procrastination. Can you talk about what they are and how to deal with them?
Well, can we talk about bookkeeping first?
Sure.
So the first thing I want to say about bookkeeping is that most people are not blessed with the I love bookkeeping gene. So one, don't feel bad because that's not your love. And the second thing I want to say about bookkeeping is that it really, really pays to have somebody that's excellent at it for 2 reasons. It gets you to get your stuff done. So if I know that my bookkeeper's waiting for my month-end information, I get it done. So it keeps me on the up and up with getting my data together, which is great. But the other piece of it is that there's good bookkeeping and bad bookkeeping, and most people who don't like to do it don't necessarily do it very well. And by well, I don't mean just getting the numbers in there correctly. I also mean knowing what categories there are, knowing how to deal with certain types of transactions. And if you can't afford a bookkeeper, again, look for trading. There are bookkeepers that love to trade with artists. There's no shortage there. And I even invite people, and I've done this actually, I found some of my most favorite trades right now have happened because I put a little message out on Facebook and I said, I need the following services. Who's willing to trade for money coaching? And boom, I got a web designer, I got a massage therapist, and I was like, woohoo, this is awesome.
Oh, that's a good idea. Use Facebook.
Yeah, so I just used Facebook, and I just was like, it didn't have to be local. Web designers don't have to be in Portland. Massage therapists do. But so trading for bookkeeping is a really reasonable thing to ask for. And people are like, wow, I'd love to have artwork, something that's customized or some piece of jewelry. So don't exclude. See, what I'm learning and what I try to constantly teach people is ask for what you want. Mm-hmm. If what you want is to work with a certain person who you love their skill set, say, how can I work with you? And if they say it costs $500 an hour to work with me, you say, that's great. I don't have $500 an hour, but I really, really want to work with you. What can we do? How can we make that happen? And see, you'd be surprised. I mean, like 80% of the time you do that, they're so impressed that you're willing to ask that they work with you. And I've done that. There's ways. Okay, mm-hmm. So there's ways. So my suggestion to everybody, beginning of the year, which is right now, is get a bookkeeper and relax, so that you can look at the numbers at the end of the month and go, wow, look at that, it's done. I mean, like right now it's January, and I don't have a worry in the world about my taxes because everything's done. Nice. It's like I just have to wait to issue my 1099s to all my contractors and give all my stuff to my tax person. I'm done.
Nice.
Awesome.
So it feels really good, and you don't get stuck. And I hate bookkeeping. I'm not going to do it. I'm the same as you. I mean, I'm a numbers person as a financial planner, but I'm not a track every little bill person. That's not me. So
I'm I'm doing some trade right now with a personal trainer. I met a personal trainer at a conference last weekend, and we got to talking, and we decided that he decided that I'm sort of his ideal client, and he's writing a book about personal training for people like me. So it was a great trade.
That's awesome. See?
And I had somebody approach me the last time I launched my Your Big Bold Creative Life Academy program, who she wanted to take the program, and she offered to be my intern for the full duration of the program, and she was phenomenal, and it was an amazing trade. And she had to stick her neck out to make the ask, right? And I was so impressed with that, like you said, that well, of course I'd love to have you in the program, and I'd love to have your assistance as an intern. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and you can also, I also have an intern right now, and did the same thing, went to the local college, said this is what I need help with, and not only was she a fabulous intern, but she's become an employee. So, there's lots of different ways to get to know people, to get some skills that you need in your small business met, and there's lots of students that need experience. So you can help people on a lot of different levels. Now, you had a second part to your question, and I already forgot what it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that one of the main reasons why I procrastinate on bookkeeping, and actually for 2014, that is my goal, is to get a bookkeeper this year. But I know that I procrastinate largely because I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know that I'm doing everything right, and that feeling of uncertainty is so profoundly uncomfortable that I just avoid it, right, until I absolutely have to. But you have talked about 5 triggers to procrastination that would relate to how people deal with their money.
Right. So the first one is fear. Fear. I think that fear related to bookkeeping is the fear that either one, I won't do it right, or the fear that I'll look at my numbers and be aghast.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of people are in denial, like they can feel like, well, as long as I don't really know what I'm making or what my actual profit or lack thereof is, I can keep the illusion going that I have a business. Whereas I say to people, no, I don't think so. I think that if you actually know that you're really making $2 an hour, it just gives you the information to decide whether that's the right way to go or whether you should get smarter about it.
Exactly.
It's just information. But fear is a big issue in procrastination. Lack of knowledge is a big issue. So you're kind of talking about, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, and so therefore I just won't do it. Instead of moving beyond the I don't know if I'm doing it right and just asking a bookkeeper to review it with you. I mean, you don't have to hire the bookkeeper to enter the numbers. You can hire a bookkeeper just to simply say, here's what I've done. Am I doing it right? Am I doing okay? Give me some feedback. I mean, frankly, our issue with money often is because we don't get any feedback. You may be doing an amazing job with money, but if nobody's around you to say, you're doing an amazing job, like you're saving, you're putting money into retirement, you're paying your taxes on time, you bought a house, like that's flipping awesome. And you're how old? 32 or 35 or 45, whatever. I have people come in all the time, I mean, people that have a lot of money, and they're like, I don't think I'm doing okay. And I'm like, wow, how did you get that idea? And they said, well, what am I supposed to compare it to? I don't have anything. How do I know? And so then I run all the projections, and it looks like they could live until they're 150, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I think you can take the trip to the Antarctic. You're fine. It's like one of my favorite appointments is to be able to say, not only are you doing great, but you really better start spending some money, or you're going to be giving the IRS way too much when you die. Like, that's not cool. So.
Oh my gosh! So a few weeks ago, I was talking with an artist who she had spent like the majority of her career as working for a big company, and just sort of selling art on the side and not really paying attention to how big her fan base was. And I made her go back and look at how many pieces of art she had sold, and she had sold over 800 pieces of art.
Wow.
Well, I can't even imagine making 800 pieces of art. That's a lot of pieces of art.
No, like over 20 years.
Oh. But still, that's a ton of work.
That's a lot of art, right? Like, it's pretty unbelievable. And she just really had no concept of how popular she was.
or what, we often say, I'll feel successful when,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we even put a definition on that.
Mm-hmm.
But unless we define it, and unless we define it on our own terms, it's not I'll feel successful when my book hits the New York Times bestseller list. It's like, yeah, maybe, but what I really would rather have is sell 50,000 copies. Like, that would feel successful. But 10,000 copies would be awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but we tend to just kind of keep moving the bar higher and higher rather than
Mm-hmm.
stopping and going, I sold 10,000 books. That's amazing. Like, hang out there for a while. Like, enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Before we raise it and feel like, oh, but I'm not so-and-so. It's like, well, no, you're not so-and-so. Good job. Like,
well, which points to the importance of tracking these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're talking about your income or, like, for me, I was feeling, having one of my periodic, oh my God, my business it's such a slog, it's going so slowly moments, which I have a lot because I get stuck in the comparison trap and looking at other people who seem so profoundly successful because all I see is their highlight reel, right? And then I looked and realized, when I actually looked at my list, I realized, wow, my list has grown 250% since June.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Take a moment and acknowledge that, and and appreciate that for what it is before you start chasing after that next target, and then start chasing after the next target.
Yeah, and Melissa, one of the things that I try to work with people on is to monthly start tracking numbers monthly, so that and again, that's what bookkeeping should be doing for us, but frankly, bookkeeping numbers can be still a little bit more abstract than what we want. But what I like to do is I'm going to teach you a little ritual because this is my favorite thing to do. So I have these chimes, and each time you make money, and especially online money, because online money is very hard to acknowledge, right? You're not getting a dollar bill in your hand and saying, thank you. Like, you don't have a chance to really say that. Mm-hmm. So this is a feng shui ritual, which I just adore because it's so much fun. And so each time you get one of those little notifications from PayPal or Square or however you get paid, you ring your chimes. And the chimes are basically, in feng shui, the chimes are about raising the chi, raising the energy around you. So what you're doing is you're changing the neural pathways in your body so that each time you have money coming in, you're associating it with a chime, which is energy raising. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And so what I do is have people track the money that comes in every day. Mm-hmm. The money every month, I want to see how much. I want you to write down the number that you owe in debt if you have debt, because what happens with debt is it just kind of either gets pushed into the background as this unbearable weight, or it's in your face all the time, and it really just helps to say, okay, am I making progress in lowering that number? And if you're looking at the debt number every single month, you're also saying, maybe I shouldn't take on this extra expense. Maybe it's time to say, I'm not going to do that piece. I'm going to go and take that money over here so that every month I see that my debt number is going down. Mm-hmm. And then I also like to have people write down what their expenses are, because our expenses change every month. But if you just track those three numbers, what I made, where my debt is, if you have it, and what your expenses were, you're going to start to tune in to where you're going and how things are going. And Melissa, to your point, I would also say that you might want to also keep a measurement of, if your strategic goal this year is like mine, which is to double my list, or build my platform by doubling my list, then if I keep track of where my list is every month, I'm seeing how I'm doing. And it's confirmation, like, oh, what I'm doing is working, or what I'm doing is not quite cutting it, but it's not the end of the year, so there's still a chance to correct.
That's
I want to double my income, right?
Such a simple thing, but something like, it never occurred to me until you said it, like, well, duh, you could have like a Google Doc or an Evernote note or a piece of paper where you just write down, what is the size of my list, what is my debt, how much did I earn this month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just keep all track of that. There we go. Just like what you have right there.
Yeah, so that's this is just my income tracking sheet, but it's just a little place to keep track. But, whatever you use, I'm actually going to create one and put it on my website soon that has those exact pieces in it. But again, it's like it's much easier for us to focus and course correct if we're focused on monthly and quarterly goals with an aim for something bigger, but with the goal that, you know, hey, maybe I've got the right ideas, the right strategies, and maybe I don't.
Yeah.
But this idea of creating proof, creating data that helps us verify, is this thing worth it? Like, a lot of artists will spend a crap load of time on an activity that doesn't generate any revenue at all. And an example is I have a lot of artist clients that donate way too much of their art to auctions.
To charities. Oh my gosh, yeah.
They donate so much stuff to auctions, and I keep saying to them, now, I understand donating the thing to an auction that you haven't been able to sell for 3 years. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But don't donate your best stuff, because it's not going to get you business. I hate to tell you this, but rarely does that get you business. Whereas if you were to take the time and energy put into donating things to auctions and instead do a show, you'd really start to sell things. Or think about, you know, asking that organization to support you in some way, and you'll support them in some way, whatever. But it's like looking at where the energy goes and what the return is for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I just don't see that there's a measurement of that.
Yeah,
for most businesses.
Not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of good to hear that's true for most businesses, because I think a lot of us creatives just get into this place of, I don't understand money and finances and business stuff, so I'm just gonna, like, you know, blah, 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 right? I'm just gonna, like, not think about it, and then, you know, we're just sort of floating around in this amorphous soup and not really knowing what's making a difference for us or not. And then we'll go and see somebody like you and think, oh, well, she's a certified financial planner. She has been entrepreneurial since she was 13 years old or whatever. So she's got the gene. She's got the money gene. I was in the wrong line when they were handing that out. So what's your response to that?
Oh, man.
I know you have one.
I have one because I felt like I didn't have the money gene, and I still don't feel like I have the money gene. I just feel like I've learned that I can learn. I'd say that's what it is. I've learned that I can learn.
Bingo.
And so it takes, my best comparison for money is that it's like playing the piano. You know, you can have a piano in your house and never play it, or you can have a piano in your house and start to practice. And if you start to practice, you will get better. And money's the same way. I mean, you don't have to be a virtuoso, you know, concert pianist, but you can decide to practice, and the more energy that you put into it, the better you'll be. That's just the truth. I think that a lot of creatively minded people need to know where to get advice from people that are going to help them and work with them around their own mindset.
Yes.
So both educationally speaks their language, which is really important because a lot of us think visually and need visuals and need metaphor and story, not analytical charts and data and crap that just makes no impact whatsoever.
Right.
And we need to know that we have these people on our side that have that capacity and can guide us. It's okay to need guidance. Yeah. Most of us need guidance, right?
Absolutely. This is a great question, and there's somebody just asked a question on the website that I really want to address because it's directly related. So Sandy, bless your heart wherever you are. After years of raising 3 sons and putting them first, I've come to realize I do not know how to put me first. I still think every day, what do I do today to help or do something for someone else? I seldom get to me, which means painting doesn't get done. Where does one start to learn to think of themselves?
That's a great question. Frankly, if that were me, I would say I would get a coach because I would need some accountability. I would need somebody to say, what are you going to do this week? And I really believe in this concept of neural pathways, that we have to really shift this energy pattern in our own bodies and being. And so if our constant tendency is to make sure everybody else is getting their needs met instead of us, it's gonna require a relationship in your life, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a friend or a colleague, that somebody who will ask you what you're going to try to track this week and be completely compassionate and understanding with you as you learn to do that. You will not be perfect at all, but who can really compassionately help you celebrate the little wins as you become more and more conscious of how you're in that pattern and when it starts to shift and what it is that feels good about it shifting, because each time it feels good, that starts to build a bigger highway for that neural pathway.
Yeah. I would add that I couldn't agree with more, by the way, and I also believe that it could be a coach, it could be any person or group of people that is focused on that goal for you. So this is why, like my programs, I'm really passionate about doing group programs where you're in a tribe with other people, so you know you're not alone. You know that you are walking side by side with other people who get it. And a lot of artists, Sandy, have the same or similar kind of experience where it's really, really hard for us to get to the thing that feeds us and nourishes us. It's really easy for us to nourish and feed other people, but not so much ourselves. But when you are in a community with other people who are continually reminding you by modeling and by reminding you that, hey, it's really important for you to get to your art, then you're just so much more likely to actually make it happen in your own life.
Yeah. So we're social creatures, and we need somebody to stick with us and help us get there, right? We need somebody to hold our hand. We need somebody to model for us. I'm that way, you know. I grew up in a trailer park, basically. You know, I grew up very poor, and I was lucky enough to have people in my life who were willing to help me, right? And since then, you know, I've hired a number of coaches to help me, and I've gone very intentionally toward finding people to be in my life who can model the kind of success that I want to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
There's a great related question from Mercedes again. She says, how do you get rid of wrong perceptions about money and art and feel that your creativity has value and is worth getting paid for?
Well, it's an inside job. It has nothing to do with what everybody out there, honestly, it really doesn't have anything to do with anybody out there. It has to do with you. And so that's why my work is very visual. You know, I'm trying to get you to look at what is your landscape, internal landscape of your relationship with money. When you can start to visualize that and start to change it by changing the picture, literally changing the picture, you start to shift that sense of value. But the valuation of your creative expression is entirely you. The world will just reflect what you feel about yourself.
Yeah, the other thing that I would add to that is that if one person on the planet likes your work enough to want to hand you some money for it, then boom, you know, you're a professional artist. If you exchange your art for whatever they are offering you and decide that that's, you know, that feels like a good exchange to you, that's it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Then that work is good enough to sell, because if one person wants to buy it, it is good enough to sell.
Oh,
Yep,
good. That's
absolutely.
great to hear. I'm a professional artist then. Yay!
Absolutely.
Mercedes says, Luna, what can I offer you to trade for your expertise? I will let you two handle that after the call.
We'll take that call offline.
Yep. Mercedes, thank you so much for jumping in and throwing your questions out there. I know it can be scary, especially in front of a live audience where there's hundreds or thousands of people watching. It takes bravery to put yourself out there and ask your questions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you for doing that.
Yay, Mercedes!
Yep, and I guarantee that just because Mercedes is the one that asked it, that doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch of other people thinking or feeling the same.
That's right.
Exactly. And, you know, the biggest thing I can tell you about building your relationship with money to be a much stronger, healthier relationship is learning to ask questions and not be afraid. It's like, I remember when I was first starting, I did not walk into being a financial advisor or a financial planner with any plan at all. It found me, and I was like, oh, what? Who are you talking to? It's not me. It can't be me. What? Like, but I was recruited into it. And I remember thinking, there's just no way, but there's this little inkling, like mind that said, I wonder if I can learn this. And then I was like, I dare you. I dare you. And so I applied and I got in, and then I was like, I had to study for this exam, and I had to learn it, and it was like, I did not know what a bond was. I didn't know how a stock worked. I had no idea what a mutual fund was. I was 40 years old. I didn't know any of these things. And, my point is that you can learn it. You can learn it.
Exactly.
It's very learnable. And you don't have to learn every nuance of the stock market to do a good job with your money. You just have to learn how to ask questions and not be afraid that your question's stupid. I mean, I have asked questions in rooms full of men because that's what this world is for me. It's rooms full of men, white men in business suits, and me. Yeah, that's not really fun. And then I'm the only one saying, excuse me, but what you just said, I'm sorry, it didn't make any sense to me at all. And the guy's going, like, it didn't? And I see around me all of a sudden these guys are like, yeah, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, but you weren't going to raise your hand, were you? No.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that brings up
on behalf
Michelle.
of all men, on behalf of all men everywhere, guilty. Okay.
Well, thank you for being honest.
Well, that's a great segue into this question from Michelle over on the website. She says, I put my CPA's annual IRS tax organizer off until March 1st every year. I hate it that much. And then I dedicate an entire weekend to it. Is there anyone who will fill out the tax organizer from receipts? Is that a bookkeeper or some other function? So, that's the big question. What's the difference between a bookkeeper, a CPA, a financial planner? What are all these different things?
Okay, so the first question is, she's talking about the organizer your tax person sends you, and what that questionnaire is simply basically looking at, has this changed in your life? Have you done this? Have you done that? It's just getting all these questions answered that you can answer January 1st. You do not have to wait until March 1st and shouldn't. Get that organizer done and answered right away so that it's in your tax preparer's hands. And why do I say that? Because they're better earlier in the year. They're better because you have their attention. When you start competing, when you start out in January or February giving them your data, they might be able to give you an hour of time. But by the time you wait until April, they might be giving your tax return 5 minutes.
Yep.
Well, I don't want 5 minutes on my tax return or on my data entry. I don't want them to be rushed. I don't want them to be freaking out. I don't want them staying up and pulling all-nighters on my tax return. So the earlier you get things in there, even saying, hey, I'm missing one piece of data. So what? Get it to them when you can, but this gives them the opportunity to get everything entered.
Yep.
It's a much better strategy. So what are all these different people? So a bookkeeper does the basic accounting, meaning that they're going to put in your income and your expenses into QuickBooks usually. That's the industry standard. Most people, that's what they're going to use. They will generate profit and loss statements for you and balance sheets. And that's really the whole job of the bookkeeper. They cannot give you tax advice. They really can't tell you whether something's deductible or not, although they might tell you what they've seen, but their job is not to tell you that. On the side of tax preparation, we have, in order of experience and licensure, tax preparers, which are the most kind of basic. That's all they do, is they're licensed to prepare taxes. And then the next level up is an enrolled agent, and they have more experience. They typically have more strategic type of background. They might have IRS. They're going to be better at defending people against IRS claims or audits. And then the next level up would be a certified public accountant, which is a CPA. And most small business owners actually don't need CPAs. A CPA requires them to have 3 years of industry experience, pass a very intense board exam, but it's also a broader, it's not just tax. It's accounting on many different levels, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that they are better suited to do your tax preparation than somebody who's an enrolled agent or a tax preparer. It just depends. And so you find CPAs that actually have no tax preparation experience whatsoever because they're accountants for big businesses.
Right.
So it can be a misnomer or a miscommunication that because you have a CPA, you have a better person. No, that's not necessarily true.
Right. So for most artists, just to recap what you're saying, for most artists, a bookkeeper throughout the year to make sure you stay organized and stay on top of it, and then an enrolled agent will handle taxes for just about anybody.
Right. Or tax preparer, either one.
Right. And then if you have like substantial assets or a multifaceted business, then you might need to talk to a CPA.
Exactly. When you're dealing with a lot of depreciated assets and all kinds of complicated real estate and lots of employees, all that kind of stuff, then yes, you're going to want a CPA. But until then, you don't need them. And they're going to cost more, too. They're going to cost a fair amount more.
And what about a financial planner?
So then in the financial advising world, there are financial advisors. So they're licensed as financial advisors, which means they're licensed to give advice around securities and investments. They may or may not have some training in planning and financial planning. And typically they are associated with a broker-dealer, so a major company, a Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones. I was going to say A.G. Edwards, but they don't even exist anymore. I don't even know who they are anymore. Smith Barney, any of those guys. A certified financial planner is somebody who has gone through, they have to have a minimum of 3 years experience in the industry. They have to have a bachelor's degree. They have to pass it's almost a 2-year training program with lots of very crazy testing along the way, and then a 2-day board certifying exam. And then they have to continue to keep their continuing ed units up every 2 years to remain certified. So they have a lot more experience, and it's much broader. They also are capable, certified financial planners are capable of saying, of charging just an hourly rate to review a portfolio, to review a plan, to give you a projection. They can be hired just for that piece of your financial world, so you don't necessarily have to have $1 million in assets to see a financial planner. Yeah. Whereas to see a financial advisor, many institutions require you to have a minimum of $100,000 or $200,000 because the only way they get paid is they're getting paid off of the investments that you have with them.
Yep.
And then there is also a designation called a registered investment advisor, and what they do is typically an hourly fee or an annual-based fee, and they navigate your financial planning and oversee the investment management of a portfolio, but they actually don't do the physical trading themselves. So the RIA would tell you, hey, rebalance your account now, do this, and then you would go do it. Okay. So whereas I actually do the reallocation myself because I'm a money manager, I manage $43 million, so I do a lot of my own rebalancing.
I was going to ask you what you do. Yeah.
Right. So I'm an investment manager and a financial planner, and what an RIA does is that they do the planning, but then they tell you, and they don't have the fiscal responsibility or the fiduciary responsibility in making the actual trades. So they have different licensure than I do.
Okay. So Minnie has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Carter. I wanted to make sure I asked before we were off this topic. But so you were referring to categories earlier, like in January, sorting everything into categories. Were you referring to all the expense lines on a Schedule C? Like
not
that kind of category?
Specifically. I think what you're referring to is my idea of having monthly numbers for yourself. And I'm not referring to a Schedule C. I'm really referring to just knowing every month that my expenses in my business were $2,000, my income was $4,000.
Oh, okay.
My debt is at $4,555.95, and my list has grown by 400 people and whatever else I'm measuring. You know, compared to last year, my income's up 25%. Just something that gives you this real sense of, one, making progress, hopefully. And again, if you're not making progress, then it gives you the opportunity to call Corey or Melissa and say, hey, I need help. Like, help me out. Like, what do I do? I want to make this stronger. I have to say one thing because I mentioned my whole field as a certified financial planner, so I just have to do my little disclosure before I forget, which is that I offer securities and financial advisory services through KMS Financial Services in Seattle. I'm done.
Okay, thanks for the disclaimer. So Luna, we've got just a minute or two left. Before we sign off, if people are interested in finding out more about money management and finding out about your book, how would they do that?
So I have two different websites. LunaJaffe.com is my primary website at the moment because Lunaria Financial, which is my financial planning website, although it's up, I will say it's getting an overhaul right now. So it's up, but not really as pretty as I wish it were. Mm-hmm. But Lunaria, it's Lunaria Financial, is my financial planning firm here in Portland, Oregon. So Excellent. Those are the two different ways to find me.
Cool. Great. Well, this has been really enlightening and really fun. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Luna, and thank you, everybody who's joining us live.
Yeah, thanks Divinity and Jan and Liz and Luna and Minnie and Rebecca and Sue and everybody else that's been watching us live. We really appreciate it. And Mercedes.
And
Sue.
Sue.
Can I say one more thing, Corey?
Yeah, please.
So on my website, you can get a free download of a chapter from my book. So if anybody wants to see what the book really looks like, they can do that. And then I'm just going to say this on here for anybody who's brave enough to be listening. If you go to lunajaffe.com/templates, you will get pretty much every template that I've created in my book that has a financial assessment and mandala and tracking sheets and exercises and you name it. It's almost all there. So that's a freebie just for you guys as being on the call.
That's really useful.
Thank you so much.
We're going to see that link in print.
Yes, we'll put that link up on the show resources when we put the recording up on creativeinsurgents.com. We'll put up the show notes and we'll have a link to the resources that Luna mentioned.
Yay!
Yay! Thanks.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.